If I had to ask someone what their favorite aspect of the Xenoblade Chronicles games are, I'd get no shortage of different answers, ranging from the exploration to the riveting story to the pace of gameplay. For myself, the most alluring aspects, and the ones that keep me coming back to this series so much, are the stories, and in particular, the strong emotional moments that make these narratives as effective as they are. Shulk's first encounter with Metalface in Colony 9 and the subsequent feelings of loss, as well as the birth of a universe crafted from the hands of a foolish man. These are just a small sample of moments that have not only acted as extraordinary character building, arc-altering events, but ones that define the games they are in. You know, it might come as a small surprise to a few people, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3 also succeeds in this department. There are numerous fantastic moments in this title, which capture a wide range of diverse tones and emotions, and honestly deserve discussions of their own. Yet, just like with the previous entries, one cutscene stood out amongst the masses to be what I, as well as what I'd wager to be plenty of others, would consider the game's greatest cutscene. That cutscene comes in the form of Chapter 6's Two Paths. In the previous two titles, my favorite cutscene picks were the aforementioned Loss and the Birth of a Universe, respectively, both focusing on pivotal moments that would direct a character's arc from then on. Two Paths falls more in line with Loss, aiming for a more lively, emotional tone by centering itself on a character's breaking point, and accentuating that with perhaps the most iconic deliveries and music from its game. And that's what we're here to discuss. While some areas will receive more attention than others, I'll be covering all things related to Two Paths, from the events playing out to the small details that help establish characters' thoughts and personalities, all the way to the music, in order to share why this cutscene is worthy of being Xenoblade Chronicles 3's greatest cutscene. But hold on now, before jumping into Chapter 6's main event, let's rewind the flame clocks a bit and take a look at what comes before, so we can establish some proper context for Two Paths. Here's what you have to understand. Two Paths is, well, it's not anything from Metal Gear Solid 4, it's already a substantially long cutscene. Yet, its effectiveness is also heavily dependent on a sequence of cutscenes before it, going all the way back to the conclusion to Chapter 5. So, we have some background context to talk about. I'll try to summarize it as best as I can, only focusing on moments that connect to details and observations fully necessary for understanding Two Paths. After escaping from Ligarte prison camp near Chapter 5's conclusion, the party is ambushed by Agnian forces led by the two mysterious consuls, N and M. The game isn't very subtle about the fact that they heavily resemble our protagonists Noah and Mio. M steps up to take on the party, and after Noah shockingly attacks Taion, they learn that M's Consul power gives her the ability to hijack and control one's consciousness, making for a seemingly impossible stand user to defeat. And it lays bare a massive development in Two Paths. I also want to note this really cool detail that I was told about, where when Taion is possessed by M, you can actually hear her say, "He lied," underneath him saying, "I lied."
I lied.
Pretty neat. Eventually forcing M into a corner, N jumps in, and it's not even a contest. No matter their best efforts, the party gets absolutely bodied, especially after Consul X shuts down their ability to interlink. Meanwhile, Zed said, "I'm not doing anything today," bought out the entire local theater, and then I don't really know. I don't know, he probably just binge Breaking Bad or something like that.
Did you know that you have rights? Yes!
Ultimately, these six are thrown back in jail, left defenseless, and taunted by N as they lay in a state of mental turmoil, as all they can do is wait a month for the upcoming eclipse and homecoming ceremony, where Mio will be sent off. Considering the party's main goal was to race against the clock in an attempt to save Mio, thinking in that moment that she has to spend the last of her precious time separated from her friends, only hearing them so desperately struggle for nothing, is heartbreaking. One of my favorite details is the sequence containing 3 shots of Noah banging on the prison door, showcasing his declining mental state from focused and composed to defeated and angry alongside the passage of time. It's not until he hears how she has made peace that Noah abandons his futile, selfish efforts and works together as a team to try and make something happen. Hey, cue the next sequence! Yeah, that one right there. The one that says melodramatic prison break AMV. Thank you. While I'm not the biggest fan of this section and generally the prison trope in JRPGs, I do love the motif of the moon to showcase the days consumed by their struggles, as well as its striking visual payoff in the form of the chapter's titular eclipse at its conclusion. Noah also has an incredibly well-delivered monologue where the darker side of being an Offseer begins to corrupt his view of everything he stood up for to this point, seeing life slip away and being unable to do anything despite being right there. This goes beyond just those he sent off though, and is directly applicable to this situation, knowing Mio is fated to be sent on, yet hopeless to save her, just as N desired. There is certainly a lot of depth to the conversation between Noah and Mio here, but we'll return to this once we have a few more pieces to the puzzle. For now, we press on to Chapter 5's conclusion with the homecoming ceremony. The party reflects on their journey up until this point, with minds bereft of the fog generated from Ionios' cycle of life and death. Although they wish they could have lived longer, they try to find the silver lining in how they inspired a new generation and progressed the war against Mobius. Soon, Mio is brought out, and tries to pull Puss in Boots,
pick it up,
and tells him to send her off if he really cares about her. Noah can't bring himself to do it, and Mio leaves him with her last words. It's been fun, Noah. Under the gaze of one of the series' absolutely sickest shots, Noah is destroyed, and with the light of day cutting through the sky, N moves to cut down Noah, ending Chapter 5. But wait! There's more. In an out-of-body experience, Noah is guided by a mysterious figure through the history of his many incarnations, peering into the lives of M and N, as well as what brought him to the point of no return. After countless times of losing Mio, N could bear to do it no longer and became Mobius, where he thought he could escape reality and cling to what he wanted most, a life with Mio, even if it was just a bastardized version of what once was, just like the world of Ionios. Believe it or not, this section with N and Z in the theater is actually classified as the first part to 2 paths, making it 18.5 minutes long. So yeah, while I plan to slow down briefly to explain some interesting details in this particular segment, the primary focus of this 2 paths discussion is the second half of the cutscene, following the loading screen. The main reason I'm not just breezing through this part as well is because this is where we see the titular 2 paths, so it's quite relevant to what's to come. In a similar way to how the audience glimpsed into N's history, N is doing very much the same, looking back on his past in the literal form of a viewer at a theater, building up to the very moment we saw N as he faded away. N's expression slips into one of confusion, however, as an unfamiliar scene lies at the end of his memories, one displaying a road splitting into 2 paths. Out of nowhere, Zed appears next to N, speaking in a manner that seems sympathetic to N's troubles, but preys on his insecurities and sows the seeds that lead to his descent. There's a great number of eye-level and over-the-shoulder shots to portray the two as if they are on a similar level. Yet, I find Zed's height subtly undermines this equality. Since Zed is taller than N, N's over-the-shoulder shots frame him at a lower level than Zed, creating what I've always interpreted as a slight low-angle shot. Consequently, Zed has more power in this dynamic and particular moment. This scene in the theater has always reminded me of Anakin and Palpatine's conversation in the Opera House from Revenge of the Sith. 2 people having an intimate conversation, the older individual maintaining control of its subject matter and pacing, while the younger, emotionally driven of the two is coerced into choosing a path, seemingly out of his own free will, that could spare them from the grief and fear of losing a loved one. And this is all punctuated by a display of art playing in the background. The mentor-like character also uses flattery as a manipulative tool, with Zed admiring N's tenacity and persistence to fight the world, and Palpatine remarking how Anakin was the best choice to hunt down General Grievous. Star Wars' Opera House scene even implements similar shot types, which just further cements the comparison in my mind. N and Zed's conversation, ultimately leading to N choosing the Endless Now, is a great moment to set up the two paths as we move into the next segment. There's a discussion about Noah's friend Chris from the past following the feeder scene, but the general idea is more important than the conversation. As the guide points out, Noah always wanted to change the world, but even though it might not seem like it, it wasn't for Mio, it was for himself. He seems to take a different direction when he and Mio have a child, living a life to its expiration rather than falling in combat. Yet, this very Noah is the one to become N. The one who has seen whether through action or inaction, he could never find true happiness, leading him to become the feared Golden Consul. Now, Zed did use his silver tongue to manipulate Noah into becoming N, but this Noah, lacking the support system that the protagonist Noah did, was more susceptible to his weakness and the allure of the Endless Now. Seeing his past self becoming N and the mistakes he made leading to this point, Noah, with new resolve, endeavors to honor Mio's legacy and reshape the world for the betterment of all. Whew. And with that, we're finally caught up to speed on the numerous cutscenes before Two Paths that total to over an hour of necessary context. We're not done with them though, because we're certainly going to be revisiting these scenes as they become relevant to Two Paths. For the time being though, let's move on to the main event. Picking up the baton from right where we left off, N brings his sword down on Noah, but halts at the last second, seeing a familiar purple aura emanate from Noah's body. This aura denotes the use of M's consciousness override ability, and explains both how Noah was able to witness everything from his past lives, and why Mio was revealed to be the cloaked figure. M walks down and takes off her mask, which acts as a symbolic gesture because the person actually descending those stairs no longer needs to hide who they truly are, and they can take on a closer appearance to who they want to be. After presenting Noah with the white Agnian flute and speaking in a surprisingly casual fashion, the truth is revealed. Ever since the encounter with M outside of the prison, M and Mio have swapped bodies. The one who died was M. This revelation recontextualizes an enormous amount of details in that gargantuan stretch of cutscenes we just discussed. So, yeah, we're going back to examine them. Taking it from the top, when the party comes face to face with M and N, M takes initiative to N's surprise. This is the first step in M's plan, as she uses this opportunity to swap places with Mio. There's also this really nifty tracking shot that turns into a 360 as the camera follows M's power wave into the position of Mio, first from a behind-the-shoulder shot framing the two, to a POV shot to show how M has now taken Mio's spot. This clever fade from black to a POV from M's body as she opens her eyes is also very neat. Initially, it might seem strange that M would cry after using her ability, but knowing that Mio has obtained all these memories and has to play this difficult role, it puts her emotions into perspective. You can even see M looking down in dismay in the following shots as she prepares herself. The last detail from this particular cutscene I like is this delivery from Mio's voice actress, Amy Fionn Edwards.
Just as we were once persuaded.
The thing is, Mio was never persuaded. She was forced into a role she never wanted, so it feels like she's looking to make N drop his guard by simply saying what he would like to hear. The battle scene doesn't have time for as many subtle touches, but I do like how Mio isn't the first to come under control of M's power. Otherwise, it could read as more suspicious and jeopardize their plan. During Lance and Senna's big sacrifice, they declare they are doing this to try and buy Mio extra time, to which M shouts she doesn't want any of it. Although I feel that these are Mio's memories and her care for Senna bleeding into her words, I also feel it can be read as a tragic moment for M. She grows tired of others making choices for her and trying to extend her life, a life she wanted to simply run its natural course. I said we would revisit this moment earlier, and the conversation in the jail cells contains some of the more profound, revitalized moments. For starters, M calls Noah by name, something he remarks she has never done before in the game. On one hand, this could be read as a slip-up in her performance as Mio. However, it could very well be M expressing Mio's feelings. M was just finally vocalizing what Mio felt, which echoes what she herself confides in Noah afterwards. What's nice is that neither interpretation necessarily contradicts each other, meaning they both can be true. Additionally, after being exposed to this Noah and the party instead of the brooding, tormented version of Noah she's familiar with, M concludes that she would want nothing more than to walk with her Noah. Thinking Mio is saying these words, the Noah in the cell interprets my Noah as himself and breaks down. Yet, what M really means is the Noah she loved, the man she raised a child with, and the one who would eventually become N. This specific instance highlights the writer's abilities to get creative with the doppelganger plot thread by utilizing hidden linguistic meanings, where the player can go back and hone in on keywords like the use of my that seem ordinary on a first playthrough, but hold deeper meaning with context. There are a couple other small expressions and camera angles used in these previous cutscenes to foreshadow this revelation, but I want to pivot toward a detail and two paths used to build upon this reveal right before it happens. When approaching Noah, I love when Mio looks at the two flutes and decides to hand over the white Agnian flute to him because it builds off the previous interaction between them in the Macpha Wildwood. When Noah and Mio exchanged flutes, it acted as a form of unity between them and their people. By Mio choosing to hand him the white flute in this cutscene, it acts as a subtle callback to the moment they shared where Mio is simply returning what she had gifted him previously. If it was M or someone unfamiliar with that heartfelt moment they shared, they likely would have given Noah the black Kavescent flute simply on principle. That's part of the reason Noah's eyes start to grow and he reacts instinctively upon seeing it. Noah also reaches for the flute as soon as that instrument jumps into the background melody, which is either a thoughtful or extremely satisfying coincidence. In this intimate moment, Noah and Mio's spirits are renewed. N, on the other hand...
Huh?
Yeah, N's kind of going through it right now, and not exactly hiding it. Side note, I want to briefly call attention to an element of N's design I always feel is underappreciated. His mask, which might be because he's usually not wearing it during his big moments in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Yeah, it looks cool, but the main draw is how N is perceived by others or us as the players. The shape of the eyepieces portray N with this permanent look of hatred and rage as he stares down his opposition, feeding into his higher status as a golden consul and base Mobius desire of hatred for what the world stole from him. Future Redeemed illustrates this notion the best in the encounter with Nael, where there's a lack of emotion in his eyes after he removes the mask. Just emptiness. Yet, because the mask is removed at this moment, we are able to witness his full range of emotions on display with no facade to mask them. We are then presented with what I'd consider the best moment in the entire game. This sequence for around the next 45 seconds is beautifully acted, animated, shot, scored. I honestly struggle to find a single aspect to critique. N starts to piece together the truth of what happened, and when he does, the next shot starts at a slight Dutch angle, a shot that typically indicates uneasiness or disorientation, before straightening out to frame N and the focus of his attention. This choice is quite fitting since N's dialogue tells the player something is amiss, but the sequence also encapsulates N's bewildered feelings at the time as he gets hit all at once with the realization that his greatest nightmare has come to fruition. And shaking his head like he cannot believe what he is seeing, the staggered walk, the high concentration of extreme close-up shots to highlight the determination in Mio's eyes and the despair in N's eyes, it's just impeccable. And then, we have the best part.
Why would you do this to me? You said you'd be by my side. Mio! All I did for you.
A year out, and this still gives me goosebumps. This sort of raw, emotional voice acting has traditionally made for my favorite moments in the series. Whether that's Adam Howden conveying Shulk's rage, or Sky Bennett showcasing Mithra's breaking point. These were high bars to reach, and yet this moment managed to match them. Harry McIntyre's performance here is one of the most crucial components to Two-Path's success, and that continues to be the case as we progress into the second half of the cutscene. Following this moment, Mio tells En he should have known why M made her decision. Snarling at Mio, En's face becomes twisted with that same look of rage that his mask usually expresses. And while his face has displayed looks of satisfaction, struggle, or hollowness, this is the first time En shows raw rage on full display. There is a level of catharsis though, since En was so smug and belittling to the party, especially Noah, during their imprisonment. Seeing such a strong opponent brought to the lowest of lows makes En seem more mortal than ever. As the music slows and fades out, the pacing of the scene changes with it, as we're finally presented with a look at M's true thoughts through a conversation between Mio and her. M is regretful of the path they walked, but views Mio, Noah, and the rest of the party as her repentance, the personification of her hopes and wishes for the world of Ionios. Yet, it's strange that Mio and Noah exist in the first place, as those that become Mobius aren't born back into the cycle. The game addresses this anomaly several times with no direct answer, but a possible reading of the situation is that these reincarnations are glitches in the system born from the hopes and dreams of those before. This wouldn't be the first time Zeno has tackled something similar to this concept. M continues to say that she has lived a selfish existence as a Mobius, being a part of an organization that held the world hostage and snuffed out the lives of countless people in order to perpetuate their own existence. This world breeds people that turn a blind eye to those around them, never considering the memories, experiences, and relationships that make them who they are. This is about to get real for a second, but this sentiment, or rather the inverse of it, is one that resonates with me in particular. Back in college, whenever I used to drive through a series of small towns whenever I made the trek home, I'd think about how there are numerous people here who have their own unique story to tell. Maybe they've lived in this small town their whole life, met their spouse here, who really knows, but it's strange that this felt like such a deep thought to me, since you feel like it's common sense, but I get it. Sometimes we go about our lives or do things that might not take into consideration those around us, and Mobius does this more than anyone else. It's intrinsic to their identity. M believes that by dying, En might finally realize that she never wanted that extended life. Even though her true wish would have been to have more time with her Noah, like she mentioned in the cell, En isn't her Noah anymore, so saving him would be enough. En, in his rage, however, doesn't see it that way. Taion then goes on to make the astute observation that En and M are other versions of Noah and Mio, which, gosh, I wonder where he got that idea from. Really putting that 35 TP to use there, huh? But anyways, this isn't necessarily the reveal since that is established earlier, but more so the rest of the party coming to understand the truth of the situation. For this next particular stretch of the cutscene, I want to call to attention the types of shots it uses, since they do a great job of illustrating the various character states and dynamics. For starters, a majority of the shots for quite some time are shot at eye level, which typically translates to a sense of equality for the audience and characters in the work. Noah and Mio are pointing out the flaws in En's decision making, but they're trying to connect with and help him. Eye-level shots sell that idea much more than low and high-angle shots, as those would dictate some form of power imbalance. When Noah questions if his doppelganger's true feelings are buried somewhere deep inside him, a panning shot is used almost as if to transfer control of the situation from Noah back to En as he prepares to make his grand speech. I really love how En's sudden laughter freaks Noah and Mio out a bit, so they either straighten their stance to prepare for what's coming, or back up slightly to create some space between them. En is broken, and declares everything he's done was for Mio, and he'll need to start from square one. The next series of shots coincides with my two favorite lines in the entire game, delivered by N.
Watch me! Rewind our clocks! Back to the start!
Red flag!
At this point, N isn't processing information anymore. He's broken and declares his drastic objective. So, what better way to sell the unsettling nature than with another Dutch angle? Next up is Mio's reaction to N, and obviously she is left both scared and disappointed as she notices he has failed to realize what M wanted. And M's memories come to the surface to remind her of the suffocating feeling of the box N put her in. As a result, a high-angle shot is employed here to make Mio and her efforts feel powerless in the face of N's toxic crusade. Finally, we have my other favorite line.
Noah, my long shadow, you have stolen her away from me. I will extinguish you and take her back. Mio is mine.
Is that also a red flag?
Crimson.
Here we have a very quick pan that is naturally masked within the movement of N's sword, paralleling the pan from Noah earlier, except here it's used to highlight Noah's reaction to N's insanity. N is in full toxic rage mode now, but I feel his character becomes extremely fascinating if you put yourself in his shoes. You fought countless times against the systems of the world only for you to fail again and again, leaving you with the only chance at what you consider victory is an existence as a being that persists off the suffering of others. And yet, your doppelganger standing before you gets to live the happy life you were never given. From his perspective, the original person was replaced by the new model. And man, that's a brutal revelation. Even Noah comments later that he might have just gotten lucky having been given the opportunity to have a strong support system around him. Now, does some level of sympathy excuse his actions? Not at all, and some might argue otherwise, but that's what makes him interesting. He's a character that you can understand the decisions they made and perhaps feel for them initially, while acknowledging their decisions and understanding of a situation have become horribly corrupted. Regardless, N's current state leaves Noah with only one option left to get through to him.
Round 1, fight!
Mio suddenly uses her telekinetic abilities to shatter her friend's shackles. I don't exactly understand where that came from, but I do appreciate how Taion, the physically weakest member of the party, has the most difficulty fighting off his captor. Meanwhile, Lance and Uni are going in for seconds. After lining up, Noah and Mio make their Ouroboros transformation to the surprise of X, since Zed's powers should lock out the ability to interlink. This might seem like a loophole, but it's explained later in the narrative in a conversation with Nia. Ouroboros possesses a true power, one that does not fall prey to Zed's power and can smash through his control of Ionios. With the strong resolve Noah and Mio have to vanquish the Endless now and end the world as they know it, they surpass Zed, or the manifestation of people from the old world's fears. Perhaps Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the most anime of them all because a lot of stuff in this game comes down to the powers of hopes and dreams. But like I said earlier, this also isn't the first time the Xenoblade franchise has used the power of will as an explanatory device for overcoming odds. The low-angle shot of each of the Ouroboros forms is also a creative way to make them feel imposing, especially when put from the perspective of X as Mio's Ouroboros looms over her. I think this was necessary to do too, since they got annihilated at the end of Chapter 5 and needed some star power to make them seem powerful again. To close the cutscene out, X commands N to do the dirty work and put an end to the party, only for him to effectively tell her to piss off. And with that, we've hit the end of Two Paths, a title adopted from the visual in the scene's first part, of the roads that lay before N as he made his decision to become Mobius, and forced M to walk down that path with him, the same one that Noah himself said he very well could have walked down. Yet, Noah chose the other path, and in doing so was still able to walk alongside Mio. Two Paths shows what lies on each path, and figuratively connects those two paths back together, so those who walk them can see what the other experienced. And thus, we have N versus Noah, the one who walked the selfish road versus the one who walked the selfless one. Although we've now walked through and analyzed the cutscene in its entirety, I do want to close this off with the battle itself and its conclusion, since two paths flow seamlessly into this segment in-game, and it would feel strange to end it right before the confrontation. The battle with N is rather similar to the previous encounter with him, except plot has deemed you worthy of success this time. You might not take it into account on your first playthrough, but a lot of hidden complexity and character building is tucked away in his move pool. Blood Moon and Glimmering Swiftblade are just sick-sounding moves, with the former potentially holding the meaning of impending doom and death, but it's the rest of his kit that is really interesting. Let's start with Chimera, which people likely known as a fire-breathing beast with the body of a goat, the head of a lion, and the tail of a serpent from Greek mythology. However, Chimera can also be defined as a hope or dream that is unlikely to be fulfilled, or an illusion or fabrication of the mind. He likely has this as an art since he consistently tells the party that their wish is a fool's errand. However, it's simultaneously ironic and fitting that N has this move named after such a notion, since his desire to live an eternal and happy life with M as Mobius is also delusional, but it's an illusion he's convinced himself of. Next, we have Shred the Straw Man. A rather strange name, but appropriate for N, since a straw man could be taken as a person having no substance or integrity. That's not a shot at N, but it's saying that to him, Noah is a glitch in the plan, a reflection of him that shouldn't even exist. He himself told Noah that he is nothing, and that there can only be one version of him. Shred the Straw Man is simply his way of calling Noah and the rest of the party insignificant. Finally, we have Kenotic Purge. Kenotic comes from the Greek word kenu, which could be translated as to empty out. Usually this is taken in the context of Christianity with the act of kenosis, or the self-emptying of Jesus. You know, it really wouldn't be a Xenoblade without some sort of religious reference, wouldn't it? The interpretation of what this act means is highly contested, but the general consensus seems to be that it's the process of Jesus relinquishing a part of his life, emptying himself of his form of God. And the fact that he can do so is meant to express his status as a deity. That last part applies to N, a being who has surpassed the traditional mortal coil, as he is able to use this power of emptying, but not on himself in a selfless way. As a Mobius, he embodies selfishness at its core by taking life from others to sustain himself. So it adds up that he uses this emptying force to take a part of being from others. And with this battle, you might be asking, how the hell did they even beat N? At the end of Chapter 5, he blocked full-on Ouroboros strikes and shattered their weapons without budging an inch. That is a ludicrous power gap for the party to surmount, but there is a strong reason why he could be felled. In Chapter 5, N is confident in his position. He hasn't had anyone bring it into question since the events of Future Redeemed. Noah is just another roadblock in the way, so there's no reason to waver. In Chapter 6, N has been mentally devastated, and like in a lot of pieces of narrative, this unhinged status brings him down and leads to sloppy decision-making. Also, getting hit with something called the Sword of Origin probably isn't going to do you any favors. I've always enjoyed how these titles go beyond the cutscenes and manage to work some minor elements into the battles that also assist in character building. Returning back to the cutscene before the encounter, one thing that I really feel strengthens two paths is the healthy amount it parallels and contrasts with Chapter 5's conclusive cutscene, It's Been Fun, Noah. Let's start with the events and how those dictate the emotions. This moment is effectively Mio's execution, a targeted form of mental warfare on the party, so they're all at their lowest. This is especially true of Noah, and even Mio in the guise of M, as you can see her disheartened expression underneath the mask. N, on the other hand, is elated. He's chewing the scenery because this event fills him with self-vindication in his decision at the sight of crushed hope. As a result of this bleak tone, the darker lighting reflects that with an off-putting yellow hue emitted from the eclipse coating everything, and dark clouds filling the sky. Compare that to two paths where the positions and lighting are flipped. Our protagonists Noah and Mio are overcome with positive emotions, while N's jubilation has crashed as he crosses the brink of insanity. Noah's screams of anguish are adopted by N once he drops his blade. They even include similar shots to parallel N and Noah, such as these extreme close-ups to highlight the emotion in their eyes. To reflect this massive change in the power dynamics, the darker lighting dissipates with the rising of the sun as the sky becomes bright with a slight overcast. And unlike a lot of cutscenes in the game, the time of day and weather cannot be customized for these cutscenes in the event feeder, which to me infers deliberate intent with the juxtaposition of these scenes. Another cutscene, Birth and Death, pulls a similar trick with the time of day playing into the scene's tone. Additionally, the music plays a large role in the way these two cutscenes parallel one another. It's Been Fun Noah uses Homecoming, a song that incorporates the Agni and Offseer melody and uses that for its most bombastic section. While this melody is normally utilized as a means to bring people together or inspire hope, here it has a sinister tone to it to match the scene. What is about to happen looks beautiful on the surface, but is truthfully twisted, matching this lovely, yet simultaneously unsettling tune. Two Paths uses Feelings Risen to the Sky, another song that implements the Agni and Offseer melody, but in a more celebratory and welcoming manner with its warm buildup. Due to the number of cutscenes that occur between It's Been Fun Noah and Two Paths, you might not notice the parallels at first, but it's genuinely awesome seeing how these two cutscenes play off of each other to build a complete picture. However, I want to get back to and close this analysis out with the topic of music, since a key ingredient to this scene's success comes from the tracks they selected to accompany the game's emotional peak. Over the course of nearly 10 minutes, 3 songs are used in the following order: Feelings Risen to the Sky, Blade, Those Who Know Fear, and Words That Never Reached You. Let's start with the first track and the one briefly covered, Feelings Risen to the Sky, composed by Yasunori Mitsuda and my personal favorite of the ensemble. This song contains the leitmotif used commonly throughout the game, and simply has this raw emotion to it, syncing itself to the progression of the scene by means of the characters' reactions. The more isolated focus section of the song, composed of a standalone brass and scarce piano notes, aligns with Noah's realization and accompanies the duration of Mio and his conversation. Since this is a more intimate, subdued exchanging of lines, you pull a majority of the instruments and subsequent energy back to let the dialogue step into the forefront and lead for a spell. Then the melody starts to ramp up to an unparalleled intensity, with En's realization of the situation before the Agni and Offseer melody, specifically a section shared between Miyabi and Mio, kicks in once it's made clear that it's not En that stands here, it's Mio. This tune is used twice more in Mio's side story dealing with Miyabi and bringing her back, but it serves a purpose here as well since the player hasn't been fully introduced to Miyabi yet. Aside from brief recantings, all we know is that this particular excerpt is the B section of Mio's Offseer melody, so it's synonymous with her until more context is provided later. This is a possible detail a lot of people have pointed out with Consul M's theme, but the use of Mio's flute in that song could act as potential foreshadowing for the body swap reveal to happen in this particular cutscene, since M was never an Offseer, and thus the incorporation of flutes wouldn't suit her theme. If that is the case, then I believe it'd be rather fitting that a similar use of the flute is applied here. And finally, the song winds down to make way for a glance at M and Mio's conversation, which led to this very moment. Blade, Those Who Know Fear is next on the playlist, another song from Mitsuda that begins solemnly before getting a brief section of energy in the second half. The song doesn't enter until a good amount of M and Mio's conversation has occurred, and I believe that was to have the music swell alongside Tayon's revelation, but more importantly, Mio's words of confidence, as this section is taken from Officer Mio.
The path they ought to have walked.
So it's confirmed. N and M are other versions of Noah and Mio.
The other me. She passed all of her memories on to me.
Additionally, Noah's words, "I felt him with these hands," sync phenomenally well with the quiet motif of Officer Noah and the finale to the song as he steps in and attempts to reach N by appealing to his emotions. Closing out the lineup is Words That Never Reached You, which is composed by Kenji Hiramatsu, and slides in marvelously alongside N's descent into madness. The overall melody contains this air of sadness alongside fear, which matches the sentiments of the characters. There are cute syncs between the music and the cutscene, but I especially love how the loop begins right as attention is given back to N. This song has a variant in the form of the battle version, which inserts some additional drums to make it feel fuller. Although this song is typically associated with N, and hell, even I primarily say that, this song is used in several other situations, including the battle against Chris in Noah's side story, the battle against Shania in Senna's side story, and the battles taking place in the city in Future Redeemed. This is likely one of the most consistently apt applications of a song in the series, since each of these encounters involves a character, usually a Mobius, who had closed themselves off from reason. Words won't cut N. Shania doesn't get the message, and Chris only wants to hear Noah's song, which leaves only one route available to get the meaning across. Words That Never Reach You is by far one of my favorite songs in this soundtrack, and a perfect way to send off the excellent cutscene that is Two Paths. I was admittedly intimidated by Two Paths when writing this script. The notion of breaking down a 10-minute cutscene, as well as all those before it that totaled over an hour, felt like untangling a massive web of dialogue, camera angles, and more. However, I cannot say that any other cutscene in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 hit me as hard as Two Paths did, and it was worth the investment. With an amazing score, voice acting, and character building, it has everything. It's a cutscene that shows to me what the medium of video games can achieve when all of the various aspects work in tandem with one another to sell the narrative's overall message. In my eyes, this is without a doubt the greatest cutscene in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and one of the best in the series. Hello there everybody, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more Xenoblade content, or just analyses on video games in general, feel free to subscribe and get updated on when I'm releasing future content. It really has been a minute since the last dedicated Xenoblade analysis, so I wanted to get back to it and just round out my greatest cutscene series, so I hope you enjoyed that. This is admittedly going to be a very busy year for me, just between work and school and YouTube, so but I'm going to try and get videos out as frequently as I normally have, but if there is a bit of a longer pause, that would probably explain it. We're actually getting pretty close to 20k on the channel, which should be kind of insane. Maybe we'll do that by the end of the year, who knows? But anyways, thank you, as always, and until next time.